Today, I'll be looking at whether $1.1 million provides sufficient savings to retire at 59 and a half without future financial regrets. Over my years of helping clients evaluate early retirement decisions, I've identified the key factors that determine whether someone will feel confident about their retirement choices years down the road. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, to show you whether $1.1 million at 59 and a half is truly enough for a regret-free retirement and what you need to consider before making this decision. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about Mark and Linda. Now, those aren't the real names, but their situation is very real. Mark is 59 and a half, and after decades of being an accountant in his career, he's built up about $1.1 million across his 401ks and his IRAs and his personal investments. And that's the age where he can finally tap into those accounts without early withdrawal penalties. So naturally, the idea of retiring has been on his mind. Now, Linda is 58 and she works part-time at a nonprofit that she loves. The paycheck isn't her focus, but it's the purpose and the social connection that she gets there. But her real joy these days is spending time with her two young grandkids. She wants the flexibility to be able to be with the kids when they need her, and she worries about stepping away from work a little bit too soon if the money feels tight. And at the same time, many of their closest friends have already retired and they travel together, they golf together, they spend freely. So Linda very vulnerably says that she worries about being the couple that's always saying no because they feel constrained about their finances if they were to stop working. And that's really the heart of their struggle. With $1.1 million, they know they've done well for themselves, but compared to their peers, it feels like maybe it's not enough. Their fear is if we're retiring now could mean fewer trips, fewer experiences, and ultimately looking back 10 years or 15 years from now and asking, did we retire too early and did we have too little? So here's the key problem. They reached this milestone age with a respectable nest egg, but they don't know if it's truly enough to give them the lifestyle that they want without a sense of regret. Should they step into retirement now, or should they keep building their nest egg while they still can? Now, if you feel like you're in a similar situation to Mark and Linda, I would encourage you to click the link below to watch a free training video that my team and I put together. We'll show you exactly how to plan your dream retirement, regardless of your situation. So what Linda and Mark shared was really impacting the sense of well-being that they had comfortably grown accustomed to. So Mark told me that most mornings he's up early, coffee in hand, scrolling through the news on his iPad before heading off to his accounting job. He's been in the same profession for decades and he's proud of what he built, but he's also tired. Some days he even catches himself daydreaming about what it might feel like if he could trade some of those office deadlines for slower mornings. Linda usually starts her day with a quick walk around the neighborhood with her dog. Twice a week, she heads to the nonprofit where she works part-time. Every time she talks about her grandkids, she lights up. It's way better than talking about her finances. She loves popping over for school pickups or having them over for sleepovers. And she wonders what it would feel like if she had the freedom to do that whenever she wants. So weekends are where the contrast is the sharpest. So their friends, many of them are already retired, they're planning golf outings, big trips, dinners out. And Mark and Linda, they join whenever they can, but more and more they find themselves hesitating, asking, if we retire right now, would we be holding up our friends? Would we be able to maintain this lifestyle? And here's the impact it's having on them. They feel paralyzed. Mark knows that once he leaves his accounting career, there's no chance of going back to that level of income. And the permanence of that decision weighs heavy on him. And every day that they delay, they're wrestling with that same tension. Are we overthinking this and missing out on these opportunities that we see our friends doing? Or would retiring too soon be a mistake and we end up regretting that? We realize that our savings just don't stretch far enough. And, this fear of making the wrong decision or the wrong move is really what has them stuck. And as you may have heard me talk about in other videos, people don't fail retirement and suddenly run out of money. That's really a fear tactic that people use for headlines rather than fail, people in retirement, they make trade-offs. And those trade-offs can be easy or hard. And so reducing that fear is all about exploring those trade-offs in advance so you can be prepared for them. You can agree to them so that you're not surprised by them. And that's what Mark and Linda needed the most. So now that you understand the situation that we're in, the next part is especially important because I'm going to show you how we can implement what I'm talking about today in your own retirement plan and how it specifically helped Mark and Linda. Now, as we got started, there were 3 questions that I needed answers to. So the first one was, what did they need to spend and what did they want to spend? So they went through an exercise categorizing their needs, their wants, and their wishes, and they came up with $90,000 is what they needed and $110,000 is what they wanted. After that, I needed to know, were they willing to phase their retirement? You see, phase retirement is when you practice retirement by reducing your hours and reducing your stress at work. One of our clients, Roger, he phased his retirement by cutting down to 3 days per week for 2 years before he actually retired fully. But to do this, it's really case by case because some employers are going to accommodate you for that and some won't. And in some cases, they just stop working completely and they start consulting for the same employer as a contractor because they couldn't do it any other way. And then the third question that we asked was, are you expecting any major events that would make a major impact on your plan? So this could be an inheritance, or maybe they change their geography, which changes their cost of housing, or maybe they haven't told us yet, but they wanted to leave a large legacy, right? So any of those things could make a large impact. And they answered no to all of those. So let's take a look at what the initial software analysis revealed. Looking at their spending horizon visually for a moment, you can see the various forms of income. Far left, the yellow shows extra spending before Social Security begins. And on the far right, these yellow spikes are 4 years of planned custodial care spending. So Medicare doesn't cover custodial care needs. And if they don't have insurance, which most people don't, they're going to need to earmark money for the possibility of them needing long-term care. Now, this future earmark is informing the spending capacity throughout retirement. And what this means is that the more future expenses that they plan for, the less that they can spend earlier on. And that's a trade-off that everybody faces. But as you're going to see in a minute, this might be one of those possible trade-offs. If they don't like the amount that they can spend early in retirement, this might be something that we can work on. Now, looking at the ledger, we see if Mark and Linda retires at 60, we see the zeros for Social Security. And in a few years, that income begins. And then to the right, we see the total income. And you can see that it starts at $102,000. And then after a few years, it drops. And the reason it drops is because they need to include an extra $2,000 per month in spending just for their healthcare gap between the ages of 60 and 65 when Medicare begins. But after that, it drops to $89,000. And then the following years, it rises due to inflation adjustments. And I checked their tax rate, and it's very low during this first several years, just about a few $1,000s a year. And so they're pretty close to the goal that they're asking for, but not quite. Like, there's definitely some work that needs to be done here in order to feel like retirement is truly viable or not. And I would not feel comfortable yet knowing what I know about Mark and Linda. And this ledger, it's the long-term plan for a perfect world. And it's based on measuring their spending capacity in light of their primary goal of maintaining the life that they want. It's a system that monitors and it asks, what is the risk of Mark and Linda meeting their goals? And it makes adjustments based on that. We can't just trust this long-term spending ledger because we live in an ever-changing world, right? And plans have different paths. So to solve that, we need a plan for how their income might change when things change. Things like our actual spending, how the financial climate changes, what to do during major market drawdowns, or even just as our goals change. So let's look at what a short-term plan is going to be, and let's stress test it so we can look at what those future trade-offs might look like. All right, so this long-term spending ledger is connected to a risk-based guardrails system. This modern form of guardrails is measuring everything about Mark and Linda's financial picture, their accounts, their social security, their future income goals, and many other things. And it's indicating that their accounts have about $1.238 billion and that they can spend about $8,210 per month. And we're going to set an upper guardrail at 36% above and a lower guardrail at 35% below their current value. Now, if in the near term, the upper guardrail is reached, then Mark and Linda, they're going to increase their spending for the foreseeable future. And if the lower is reached in the near term, then they would want to reduce their spending by $300 per month. Now, one of the reasons that this guardrail is so far below and the adjustment is so modest is because most of history has shown us that down periods tend to recover. In fact, they always have. And even though that's not a guarantee, it would be foolish to plan otherwise. So this modest adjustment is in service of seeing what happens and not making drastic changes too often. And this is a common flaw in older versions of guardrails. They adjust too frequently, too abruptly. And the reason that they have that flaw is that those types of guardrails, they're not informed about Mark and Lisa and all of the stuff specific to them. Rather, those other forms of guardrails, they're just starting with a static percentage, and then they're blindly adjusting based on a small set of rules. So let's pretend that Mark and Linda, they like the income that they see, which in this case, they don't yet, right? And in a minute, I'm going to tell you how we address that. But pretending the income is where they want it on that long-term ledger, the next thing that they need to do is stress test it and see how often with this plan they would need to be making adjustments, or those adjustments might happen. And before we do that, I'll mention that everybody wants and has a steady monthly income. That rarely changes. So this is not a wishy-washy you're up in income, you're down in income. This is steady monthly income. So when we test the plan, this is what we see. 98% of the scenarios tested, Mark and Linda were able to spend more than the long-term plan initially indicated. Every 2 years, they hit the upper guardrail, and the average increase was a 5% increase in spending. And every 6 years on average, they hit a lower guardrail, and 90% of those reductions were between 1 and 18%, the average being 6%. And the median income that they experienced during their lifetime was $7,240 a month, or about $87,000 per year. And that's in today's dollars. So that means that that's what their lifestyle felt like. That's what they got to spend throughout their life. And it can help to know how we might do during really hard or difficult times. And for that, we can overlay this plan onto historical periods so that we can see how it would have done. And here we see that what happens if retirement starts in 1968 and we're about to face a long period of stagflation. So surprisingly, they would have maintained their income above the planned long-term ledger. So the baby blue is the planned income and the dark blue is the actual income that they would have been able to spend. And that red bar is a reduction. And the reduction is called for because this plan has that long-term care, healthcare earmarks at the end of the plan, which calls for some very severe spending. So that's why that's there. You also hear often about the 4% rule and how rigid it is, but let's take a look at these percentages. So these are the percentages being withdrawn from the portfolio each year of this simulated retirement. So Mark and Linda can look at these trade-offs and they can decide if they can accept them or if they need to do some work to pull more levers to get themselves to a place where the spending feels confident and the potential lifetime spending is a fit for them. And it's not an easy decision because there's also the trade-off of the opportunity cost of missing out on more time with their grandkids and more time during their most energetic time of life. So to help them with this, we took the questions a little bit further. So first, and most importantly, we had some suspicion around their numbers. So they said that they needed $90,000 a year, but they wanted $110,000. Well, From experience, I can tell you that people tend to overplan when it comes to their active years. Did they plan for 10 years of vacations or 30? And if they plan for 30, then we can break down their spending goals and we can separate the vacations and the travel with their friends for maybe 15 years. Now, that's a significant number. If they've planned $10,000 extra for vacations, well, that's $150,000 in overplanning. Secondly, I asked Mark about doing a phased retirement where he could have more time off, but keep working a few more years to help cover the cost of healthcare. And he agreed to look into it, talk to his employer and see if he could pull that off. And then third, there's another area of opportunity that I referred to earlier, and that's money that we earmarked for long-term care needs. Remember those 4 years of $100,000 plus an extra expenses? Well, what if we used home equity to cover that? I mean, their house is paid off. Many people can plan on using what's called a home equity conversion mortgage. In other words, a reverse mortgage as their earmark, and that way they can reduce that very expensive need. And I'm not here to sell you on reverse mortgages, but the best thing that they do is they take an illiquid asset and they make it usable to help you live the life that you want. So I tested it and I removed the healthcare earmark at the end of life just to see what it would do to their lifetime spending. And the average income went from an average monthly income of $7,200 per month up to $7,900 per month. So that's $8,400 more per year throughout their entire lifetime. And so after working through these questions and measuring their trade-offs, Mark and Linda figured out how to find that balance of feeling like they could hang out with their friends and go on trips while avoiding regret about when they decided to fully stop working. So now that you've seen what retiring at 59 and a half with $1.1 million requires to avoid that future regret, you can make a more thoughtful decision about your own early retirement timeline. And if you need more help with your retirement, my team and I have put together a comprehensive video that dives even deeper into retirement planning as a whole. And in this exclusive video, we break down exactly how to determine if you're truly set for retirement, regardless of your situation. So just click the link below to watch it now, and I'll see you in the next video.